Hi everyone, it's Dr. Romani, and welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism and narcissistic relationships. So, narcissistic relationships are basically two-way streets of shame. People who are in the relationships feel shame. Narcissism in and of itself is a shame-based pattern. Their percolating sense of inadequacy that's all brewing under consciousness, and when it gets pinged, the shame gets activated. For example, someone might criticize them or they don't get a promotion or something, and they react with rage. Such fun, right? For the people in the relationship, they feel shame for so many reasons. They are often shamed by the narcissistic person. People around them may shame them for not understanding that relationships are hard or families are complicated. People in these relationships may feel ashamed for choosing the narcissistic person. They may feel ashamed for staying in the relationship. They may feel ashamed by being from such a toxic family or being in such a toxic relationship. They may feel ashamed at how the narcissistic person or people treat them in public, treat them at all. Lots of shame, which can often result in isolation for a person who is in a narcissistic relationship. Now, with all that shame, especially for people who don't yet sort of fully get narcissism or can't easily get out of the relationship, there is a dynamic that is also a double-edged sword. You should know by now, if you have been watching this channel with any regularity, that taking them on, calling them out, or even getting into an argument with them is a pointless endeavor. For folks who are stuck in these relationships, especially if you are engaged in caregiving, co-parenting, or it's your job, you simply can't afford to be fighting all the time. So people, and this may also happen before, again, you fully learned what narcissism is about, people may just do what the narcissistic person asks them to do. It's often easier. It shuts them up, it keeps the trains moving on time, it gets the narcissistic person off your back for a minute. It may also be how you were programmed in childhood to simply comply or go along with what the narcissistic person wanted, and you may not have had much of a choice. Where it gets really interesting, and actually quite gross, is that if you do exactly what they want, they may actually praise you, again, in a gross way. It may be passive-aggressive praise, but it will be praise. Things like, well, good for you. That wasn't so hard, was it? Or they might say, wow, look how good you're doing. Or, wow, good job. See how easy that is? So it's praise, but it's often enrobed in contempt or mockery or dismissiveness. But it's sort of praise, and people learn if you comply, whether it's praise or you just get an easier life out of it, things go smoother. And that's challenging because it explains why so many narcissistic people are enabled in their relationships, because people can't get into it with them 10 times a day. But also people get indoctrinated into these patterns. All of these things often happen quite gradually. You may initially have tried to push back, but over time it's just too exhausting. So then back to that shame. When we get that praise for complying with them, it doesn't feel like ordinary good praise. It feels like I had to devalue myself and keep silent and put up and shut up and do what this narcissistic person wants. And they give me their messed up, patronizing version of praise. So your reason for doing what the narcissistic person wants may not have been because you respect what they're asking you. It may simply be to keep things running and keep life going. And you have and are doing many really praiseworthy things in your life, but the narcissistic person is not going to notice them unless they're at service to them. None of this feels good. And it really kind of creates a kind of, again, a gross dynamic in the relationship that brings up that shame. I understand why people in these relationships especially those who decide to stay, or it's more complex, it's a family system or whatever, but they just do what the narcissistic person wants. You end up doing a sort of mental calculation, decide it may not be worth the strife or the stress for others in the household, or people who are around you, or the wasted time, or the psychological bandwidth to fight it. So you do what they want because it's easier. But you're not doing it for them. Frankly, it may be for you more as a workaround. So when that moment, when you do something for this unfortunate reason, it doesn't feel good at all. So having it be praised can bring up a feeling of shame for a person in the relationship. Honestly, there is no easy fix here. If you are going to stay, or some of these relationships have to persist in your life, like family you can't fully cut out, jobs you need to keep, friends who are embedded in a larger friend group that you do like, then this is often the smoothest way forward. I often suggest to people that they take stock of the situation so they are clear on their true north. What is truly motivating them to do this behavior? What is the psychic toll of doing this behavior? Is it something that diminishes you in some way? And are you clear on why you did it? Clarity is everything. You may recognize that you give in to their way of doing something because it'll keep the house quiet on the night before a child in the household has a big assignment due the next day. It's not what you want, but it doesn't feel, degrading or personally invalidating to do it. You don't love that they think you did it their way because you think their way is the right way, but you did it to protect the child, to keep the home serene, to avoid the argument, to avoid interacting with the narcissistic person. So you're clear on why you did it. Not saying you think you're going to change the narcissist or they're going to be happier in the relationship. No. And I'm not saying any of this feels good. But having that clarity can circumvent some of the shame of that episode. The shame of staying in it, well, that's a bigger shame. That's a bigger nut to crack, and that's not what this video is about. Listen, somehow the toxic folks in our lives find a way to even make praise feel bad. Go figure. But I want to this video is really meant to catch yourself in the shame you may feel of like, they're telling me I did a good job. Well, they're telling me I did a good job because I'm doing exactly what they wanted. Yep, that's right. Be clear on that, but also be clear on why you did that. It's not because you think they're going to change. It's not because you think it's going to get better. And hopefully it's not because you don't think you deserve better. But you're making tactical decisions to keep the trains running on time until you can figure out a different mode of transportation. Thanks again.